It always makes me wonder what would be a real protagonist character looks like. After watching hundreds of animes, I finally able to come to some conclusions. As anime fans, we all love well-written characters, particularly protagonist. In this video I am going to explain to you how to write a proper protagonist. Relax yourself and sit down on a chair or lay down on your bed if you are lying down. Take your time and listen to every single point. We are going to go deep into the technical aspects of a well-written protagonist. You might be having some doubts on your mind right now. Don't worry. It's completely natural to have that. As we proceed into the discussion, your mind will all be clear. So try to immerse your brain onto every point that I'm saying and listen closely. Focus on the topic such that no one disturbs you. So let's begin. If someone were to inquire about my preferred characters, I tend to lean toward the protagonist, the main character, the MC. Perhaps this inclination stems from what some might call main character syndrome. An ex once jokingly accused me of harboring such a trait, though I'd prefer not to delve into that. Truthfully, the reason I am drawn to protagonists is due to what they symbolize. While many literary establishments define the protagonist as the character around whom the story revolves, you're astute enough to recognize it's more intricate than that. Or at least, I assume you are, given that I am your creator. The protagonist is the character who propels the narrative forward, whose destiny holds the most significance. In essence, they are intricately tied to the plot or conflict of the story, often serving as its emotional core. This definition offers a nuanced perspective on the role of the protagonist, portraying them as the driving force of the narrative and the vessel for its core elements. They shoulder the themes and ideas the story seeks to convey. Even Merriam-Webster draws a parallel between the Greek word protagonistas, meaning the first struggler, and the role of the protagonist in a story, to stand and struggle against someone or something, perhaps even themselves. The protagonist strives against the status quo to grasp an understanding of the narrative's themes or to acquire the power necessary to combat the prevailing forces. It's rather engaging material, wouldn't you agree? Although the character of the protagonist has evolved over the years in fiction, I ponder if there exists a perfect character that truly embodies the definition we've just discussed, the struggling protagonist. There are certainly numerous mediums to explore in order to find out, but that sounds like too much effort for my liking. I'm curious, but not to that extent. I'll simply need to narrow my focus. Let's consider shonen protagonists. There truly is nothing quite like the protagonist characters in shonen. They exude an energy, an aura, that captivates me unlike any other medium. Luke Skywalker, Hamlet, Odysseus, they all come to mind. But have you heard of Ichigo Kurosaki? Now, that's a main character. But let's not digress. The question is, does any of them fit my ideal struggler protagonist model? Who do you think it is? I've got it, the steadfast, free spirit, soon-to-be pirate king. He might just be the epitome of a dynamic character. Ironically, Luffy isn't a bad pick for a protagonistas. I really dislike saying that word. I think I'll refrain from using it. Oda consistently places Luffy in battles against foes who can outmatch his physical prowess, compelling him to grow in ways beyond mere physical strength. Well, except for a few instances. Seriously, Luffy has had to evolve as a captain, a friend, a fighter, a dreamer, and a freedom fighter. There have been moments when Luffy has had to mature through adversity. But does that categorize him as the struggler protagonist? Not really. In the grand scheme of One Piece, Luffy tends to bend the series to his will more often than not. Despite the length of the series, I can count on one hand the number of times Luffy has faced consequences for his decisions or beliefs. He typically is rewarded for his steadfastness, and as a fan, I guess I can't complain too much. One Piece just isn't that kind of story. It would be difficult to be the embodiment of liberation if the story consistently hindered him from liberating people. So, sorry, Straw Hat, you don't make the cut. Who else? Who else? Naruto? Maybe, definitely not. Don't get me wrong, I like Naruto as a main character and what his ideology offers to the story. For a character whose ethos is not that hard to understand, fans love to misinterpret his role as an MC. Naruto was supposed to be about doing it yourself, is the common complaint when discussing Naruto's ethos, since the titular fox boy ends up being tied to an ancient prophecy. But Naruto was never about that. The story's themes have always been about believing in yourself, even when no one else does, breaking cycles of hatred, and never going back on your word. Even the reincarnation element of the story, whereby Naruto and Sasuke's fate are tied to their ancestors, was tossed aside by our protagonist, who chose to fight to save his friend rather than continuing the cycle. Naruto's world does push back against him and his ideals. His struggle against the status quo is what draws people toward him. So why doesn't he fit the bill for the struggler protagonist? Well, this is where I think the topic of plot armor comes into play. I'm looking for a character whose position is a little more grounded and isn't consistently being saved or pushed to the forefront by the narrative. I give Naruto a lot of praise for what he has accomplished, but I can't ignore the massive buff he gets over other characters simply because of Kurama. I don't think our struggler protagonist should have a consistent, get-out-of-jail-free card. Okay, so not Naruto either. Others, like Bakugo and Todoroki, were touted as being better candidates for the role of main character because they were more interesting. Deku, being the most timid while also being the most courageous, is what makes him perfect for the role of main character in My Hero. As the story continues, the lines between hero and villain become blurred. The failures of those who are supposed to be the protectors created the villains that are destroying the world. The hero system that everyone believed in was built on shaky ground, and villains like Shigaraki have come to topple it over. Someone like Midoriya, who embodies the themes of saving people who need it and trying his best no matter what, is the kind of person who can actually bring change to this world. He struggles against villains, his heroes, his friends, his powers, even himself, pushing further and further to save as many people as he can. No other character can fit this role. He is the perfect protagonist for My Hero. Super close, but still not what I'm looking for. Deku's core character is never really challenged by the story. He lives in a hero society, so everybody wants to be a hero. The only people who really chastise him for the way he is are the villains, and I guess you can say Bakugo, but that's not really surprising. Right, so let's take a step back. What we're looking for is a character that embodies all three of these elements, being the embodiment of the core theme of the story, not being overpowered or lacking an easy way out during heavy plot moments, and constantly struggling against the world they inhabit. The characters we've already discussed, and many others in the shonen genre, have some of these traits in spades. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure Ichigo from Bleach and Denji from Chainsaw Man came to mind, but the issue is, I don't think any of these characters take it far enough. I'm looking for someone who's a little more like Guts from Berserk. Berserk being a seinen, so it doesn't really fall into this category, but Guts definitely is the type of character that is constantly fighting back against the world he exists in. As the main character, it is his role to continue pushing forward and present the viewer with what this story is really trying to tell them. But Berserk is pretty dark in its setting and covers a lot of heavy story elements. You don't really see that kind of stuff in shonen series. Maybe there just isn't a shonen character that fits my model for the struggler protagonist. Wait, hold on, yes there is. There is an ideology that hangs over every facet of Jujutsu Kaisen's world, a poison that seeps into the psyches of every character, the concept of power and what it means to be someone with it and to be someone without. Jujutsu Kaisen is plagued by a single philosophy: those who choose to hold on to their humanity will always be weak, those who discard their humanity in the pursuit of power and Jujutsu will obtain the title of the strongest. Now, typically, this kind of rhetoric is something you only really see touted by villains of shonen stories. Think Majin Buu in early Dragon Ball, Vegeta, or even early Vegeta. But that's the thing about Jujutsu Kaisen, where characters like Sukuna are the embodiment of this ideology, and I will get to him in a moment. he isn't the only one who upholds it. Satoru Gojo is often looked at as better suited for the role of protagonist than Yuji by many fans. He is all-powerful, a god amongst men, titled the strongest of his era. His presence is felt at every turn, and so much focus is placed on him in the story. He's undeniable, and I can see why people see him the way they do. But Gojo, like Sukuna, is a byproduct of the poison that plagues the jujitsu world. Since he was born, Gojo was able to sense the difference between him and everyone else. This massive gap in ability caused him to become jaded and indifferent from those who are weak. This continued all the way into his teenage years, although his perspective did change a little due to his experience during the Star Plasma Vessel arc, coming to understand that maybe he wasn't capable of fixing everything with his power, looking towards the future generation for help. That poison could never truly be washed away. His rebirth and his battle with Toji brought Gojo to new heights. He towered over everyone even more than before. The death of Gojo, and soon after, Kyusuke at the hands of Sukuna, brought to light the downfall of those who achieve the peaks of power. For there can only be one at the top, and chasing it only leads to profound loneliness and eventual defeat by someone above you. But you don't even need to look at one character to see how this obsession with power is illustrated. The very hierarchy of jujitsu sorcery is drenched in this poison. Prioritizing powerful curse techniques, strong fighters, and curse tools has created generations of prejudice, discrimination, and abuse within the clans of jujitsu sorcery. Those who do not show promise from birth are cast aside and considered burdens. It has fostered profound levels of hatred within one's own family. Look no further than the Zenin clan. Maki, Megumi, and Toge have all been subjected to discrimination and hardship because of the Zenin clan in a number of different ways. It has all led them to pursue power in the hopes of breaking the chain of their birthrights. No matter the reason, no matter how altruistic, allowing the obsession to seep in will lead characters like them to toss their humanity aside and become monsters themselves. Toge was almost saved from this fate because of his wife, but the moment she died, so did his will to hold on to his humanity. Megumi, being someone everyone placed a profound level of pressure and faith in because of his curse technique, grew up with a chip on his shoulder, causing him to act incredibly reckless at times, trying to shoulder responsibilities all on his own. His need to prove himself and survive has led him to make decisions that he knows his peers would never approve of. Even Maki, a character who was actually able to break free of the Zenin clan curse by destroying the clan itself thanks to her awakening, but it was her ruthlessness and beast-like demeanor that caused even some of her peers to call her a monster. Even when she speaks about Mai's death, she is stated saying she lost her heart. Losing her tie to humanity seems to be the only way for her to ascend, and there's no going back from there. Jujutsu Kaisen consistently pushes characters into a corner where their worst selves emerge in order for them to succeed. So many characters in Jujutsu Kaisen have either fallen into the trap of chasing strength or become a cog in the machine of jujitsu sorcery. It's a never-ending pile of death and suffering, and the one who stands at the peak of it all is Ryomen Sukuna. The one who doesn't just propagate this concept of throwing away his humanity, he embodies it. Once a human who slowly morphed into something else, not fully a curse but definitely no longer human. His obsession with power and the freedom to do anything he wants has turned him into an unstoppable monster. He towers over others like Gojo but on a larger scale, and because of the power he possesses, his way of life is pushed upon anyone weaker than him. Again, much like Gojo, he is undeniable, or at the very least, it feels that way. It has even caused some fans to view Sukuna as the one who embodies the core elements of Jujutsu Kaisen's ethos. But it's not him. It's not Sukuna. It's not Gojo. It's not Megumi. It's not even Yuji. None of the major players in the Jujutsu world embody the narrative's ethos. All of them have fallen victim to the poison of seeking power and discarding their humanity for it. Except, since the first time I watched Jujutsu Kaisen, I fell in love with Itadori Yuji. He's a very unique character. While appearing simple on the outer layer, he truly stands alone from his shonen contemporaries. And for a long time, I never knew why. Again, he seemed rather simple in terms of what you would expect from a high school shonen protagonist, a strong sense of responsibility, incredible physical ability. But there was also an almost unwavering connection to his humanity. His very first introduction to the show is him helping others. His love for people and the need to do what he believes is the right thing is what defines his character. But it's also the one thing the world of Jujutsu Kaisen seems to despise the most. Yuji inhabits a world that is actively trying to either use him, dispose of him, or strip him of his humanity. There have even been times where it appeared that Yuji would fold under pressure, give in to that darkness. He has once considered himself a cog in the machine, like everyone else. He does not possess a cursed technique. He doesn't have a unique ability, and he burdens himself with the problems of others. He is, in the eyes of the godlike monsters around him, incredibly and remarkably human. Yuji is consistently and relentlessly punished for trying to play hero, for trying to save people, for trying not to kill, for trying to hold on to his humanity. He struggles and fights against those who believe him weak. He had to watch so many people die. He's had to make difficult decisions and grow up, from being a simple high school kid to a full-fledged jujitsu sorcerer. But we, as viewers, are given reassurance that no matter how much this world pushes back against Yuji, he will keep moving forward as a human. He won't allow himself to be taken by that. Through all the destruction, death, and chaos that ensues during Jujutsu Kaisen's runtime, the moments I cherish the most are the ones with Yuji simply talking to someone about how he feels. Each time we, as the viewer, are able to see that ever-present humanity along with the person he is speaking with. Nanami, Nobara, Toto, all these characters have played major roles in Yuji's development, imparting important lessons and perspectives Yuji needed as a way to either express his struggle to someone he trusts or to remind him of what's important to keep moving forward. The conversations I think back on the most are the ones Yuji shares with Nobara and Toto. With Nobara, after the battle against the two death-painting brothers, her and Yuji realized they didn't just simply exorcise curses but mutated humans. Where you would expect most characters in this moment to simply justify their actions as a way of survival, much like how Nobara processed it, Yuji took a moment to mourn the people he had to kill, saying, "I'm happy that you and I survived. I'm relieved even so, because of the life I took." Tears were shed. That's all. And with Toto, someone who was ready to shut his eyes to the weak and embrace the darkness, the light in Yuji's eyes reminded him of who he was when trapped in the confines of Higuruma's domain. Given the choice to relinquish the blame of the massacre committed by Sukuna in Shibuya, Yuji takes the blame and faces almost sure defeat. After the fight, Toto explains to Yuji that he knew he did not commit that sin, asking him why he decided to admit to the crime when he didn't commit it. And Yuji responds, "Even so, it's my fault because I'm too weak." This is a character who chooses to remember who he is and what he has done. Where other characters will make justifications for the death of others in order to continue fighting, Yuji will never trample over the dead to reach a goal. Where Jujutsu Kaisen pushes our protagonist to strengthen his resolve through battles with villains like Mahito, who himself is the literal embodiment and curse of human beings, Yuji fights against the poison with the will of those who believed in him at his back. To me, Jujutsu Kaisen is not about tossing away your humanity to become strong, to succumb to the ideals of a curse just to become another pawn in Jujutsu society's game. The ethos of this story is to rage against it, to reject the poison, to remember the dead, and to struggle against the gods and remain human. In the words of a great man, there's nothing wrong. I'm glad you found our conversation meaningful. I'd be happy to continue chatting and being here for you as you go through these changes. Feel free to share your thoughts and ideas anytime. Take care, friend. Bye.